Hi children, I am going to continue the lesson Expansion of Democracy. First let us have a quick recap of what we learnt in the first part. We learnt about Libya, how people in Libya struggled to get independence from colonial rule, and after that Gaddafi's government was established in Libya with the help of some army officials, and how people got independence from Gaddafi's rule also. This rule also came to an end and democracy was established in Libya on 14th November 2012. And we learnt about the Arab Spring and what were the changes brought in Libya by Gaddafi's government and how the Gaddafi's government was overthrown. And we started about Myanmar, the freedom struggle in Myanmar, how it was led to get freedom. And Myanmar was also colonized by the Britishers and it got independence in 1948. Now let us continue the lesson. Aung San, he was the leader who led the freedom struggle and got independence for Burma. Aung San, he was the leader who led the freedom struggle and got independence for Burma. The present name of Burma is Myanmar. And this Aung San, he was the father of Aung San Suu Kyi. You might have heard the name of Aung San Suu Kyi. And in 1947, Aung San, who was the leader of Burmese ethnic group, he came to an agreement with the ethnic minorities. Minorities means people who are in less number in population. Those are called minorities. These ethnic groups, they were in less number, so they are called ethnic minorities. And with these ethnic minorities, he came to an agreement. And this agreement guaranteed ethnic rights, many rights to the ethnic groups, and also inclusion of minorities in the Burman democratic process. A guarantee was given, a promise was made that these ethnic groups also will be given an opportunity to take part in the democratic process. And however, Aung San was soon assassinated. As soon as he signed an agreement with the ethnic groups, he was assassinated. Of course, maybe it is by the military only. And soon after his assassination, the Burmese military slowly advanced into the ethnic states to rule by force. It wanted to take control of the ethnic states by force and rule the ethnic states. So it started slow advancement into the ethnic states. And many of the ethnic groups took to arms to protect their state from the Burmese military. And they demanded autonomy, means independence to rule themselves. Many of the ethnic groups, they took up arms to protect themselves against this military rule and they demanded autonomy, that is to say independence to rule themselves. They wanted to rule themselves. They also demanded for ethnic rights and a democracy in which they also had participation, in which they could also participate in the governance. Such a democracy they wanted. And as these clashes between the ethnic groups and the military increased, in 1962, the elected government was overthrown by a coup. Coup means to take the control of any state or kingdom by force by the military. If military takes control of any state or any kingdom by force, that is called as coup. Military coup or coup. And Army General Ne Win took over the control of Burma. When a coup took place, then Army General Ne Win, he took over the control of Burma. And immediately he introduced some reforms. First, he nationalized all the industries and mineral resources. I told you already what is nationalization. Nationalization means bringing it under the control of the government so that all can enjoy the profits equally. And he also made some laws to protect the peasants' rights to have land and property. To protect the peasants' rights to have land and property, he also introduced some laws. And to help the poor peasants, he also abolished the rents on land. Rents on land which were being paid by the poor peasants, they were also abolished by him. And since then, the country was ruled by army generals. And they said they are following socialist policies where all people have equal rights. Socialism is equality of all the people. And these people, they said that army generals, they said that they are following socialist policies where all the people have equal rights. And thus, they took over the control of major resources of Myanmar into their hands. And in Libya, as we have seen, the Gaddafi's government introduced some reforms which led to the development of the country. But in spite of introducing some reforms by the military, Burma did not make any development. And moreover, the farmers became more and more poor in Myanmar. Even after introducing many reforms for their welfare, the farmers became more and more poor. And even the farmers were forced to sell away their children to the army and to work in the mines. They became so poor that they were forced to sell away their children to the army and to work in the mines. And the army generals who ruled Burma, they violated all the human rights. They took to forcible relocation of the people. Forced labor was widely used by them. Forced labor means without paying any wages, people will be forced to do labor by them, and including children. They were also included in this forced labor. They were also forced to do forced labor. And the students, usually they took an active part in the protests against the military rule. Very soon, protests against the military rule started, and the students took an active part in these protests against the military rule. But all such protests were suppressed by the army. They were crushed down by the army people. And in 1988, a major protest against the army rule broke out, and it was also brutally suppressed by killing thousands of demonstrators. In these protests also, thousands of demonstrators, they were killed, and it was brutally suppressed by the army. And a new military council took over power in the next year. Next year, a new military council took over the power, and it was around this time that Aung San Suu Kyi, she was the daughter of Aung San, who was the leader of ethnic groups. And this Aung San Suu Kyi, she began to fight for reforms in Burma. She wanted to establish democracy in Burma. So she began her fight. She entered into politics and she began to fight for reforms in Burma and to establish democracy in Burma. And she became a central figure in the protests and the struggles thereafter. Because she wanted to establish democracy in Burma, she became a central figure in the protests and the struggles against the military rule. And these rulers, they declared elections in 1990. In 1990, elections were held in Myanmar, and in these elections, a new political party, National League for Democracy, NLD, it was formed by Aung San Suu Kyi. You can see her in the picture. She formed the party NLD, National League for Democracy, and this NLD also contested in the elections, in 1990 elections. And this party only won the majority number of seats. That is, 80% of seats were won by NLD party. But by that time, Aung San Suu Kyi, she was under house arrest. She was kept under house arrest because she was going against the military rule to establish a democratic form of government in Myanmar, and for that purpose, she was leading many protests and demonstrations. She was kept under house arrest. House arrest means she is not allowed to interact with any people, even with her own husband or her two sons were not allowed to meet her. She was not allowed to talk to anyone. She was not given permission to move around. Only she remained like a prisoner in her own house. She was not allowed to see even her sons and husband also. And because of these protests and all, she was kept under house arrest. And her party won majority number of seats in 1990 elections. But the military refused to hand over power to Aung San Suu Kyi because she was under house arrest, and moreover, they did not accept this victory also. Because she was under house arrest, they did not agree to release Aung San Suu Kyi from house arrest, and they refused to hand over the power also to NLD party, which won the elections. And there was also international pressure created through economic sanctions. All the other countries in the world, they imposed economic sanctions on Myanmar. What are these economic sanctions? These economic sanctions are imposed by the countries to bring pressure on the rulers. imposing economic sanctions means trade with that country will be stopped by all the other countries. That means now all the other countries, they stopped their trade with Myanmar. That means Myanmar cannot import anything from other countries and Myanmar cannot export anything to other countries. That is the meaning of economic sanctions. So, internationally also pressure was brought on Myanmar by imposing economic sanctions. And trade between Myanmar and other countries was stopped. And as a result of this, Burma was not able to export its products to other countries and it was not able to import anything which it needed from other countries. And this puts great pressure on the country's economy. Though the people are the targeters, the people are targeted ultimately, but economically the country also suffers. And these economic sanctions are used to bring pressure on the rulers. And over the years, there has been a worldwide pressure on the military government in Myanmar to extend civil liberty, to provide civil liberties in the country and to establish a democratic form of government. Pressure was brought on Myanmar for many years. Now, changes in Burma. From 2008 onwards, many changes took place in Burma, like conducting a referendum. Referendum means a direct vote through which the entire electorate is asked to accept or reject a particular proposal. Electorate means a group of voters who are eligible to vote is called as electorate. A group of people who have the right to vote, they are called as electorate. And referendum means a direct vote through which the entire electorate, that means all the people who have eligibility to vote, they are asked to accept or reject a particular proposal. A proposal is put forth and then they are asked to either accept it collectively or reject it collectively. That is called as referendum. A referendum was conducted in Myanmar to know the opinion of the people regarding establishment of democracy in Myanmar. And however, the government continued to be formed partly through elections and partly under nomination from the military. Under the observation of UNO, elections were held in 2010. Again, elections were held in 2010. And Aung San Suu Kyi, she was not allowed to contest in the elections as she was under house arrest. And only after elections she was released from the house arrest. And the Union's Solidarity and Development, which was supported by the military, won the elections. The Union Solidarity and Development Party, it was supported by the military and this party won the elections in Myanmar. And many malpractices took place in these elections. Thein Sein, he became the president of Myanmar in these elections. And in 2011, NLD, that is National League for Democracy, which was led by Aung San Suu Kyi, it contested in the elections and won 43 out of 45 seats. Majority, it got the majority. And the freeing of Aung San Suu Kyi from house arrest and the participation of NLD in elections, these two are considered as the beginning of democracy in Burma. Since she was released from house arrest and her party participated in the elections, democracy could be established in Burma. So these two incidents are considered as the beginning of democracy in Burma. And it is expected that in Burma, multi-party democracy may be established in future. Now, Nobel Peace Prize acceptance. Aung San Suu Kyi, for her struggle for freedom and for establishing democracy in Myanmar, she was awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. At that time, still she was under house arrest only, in 1991. And it was her son who took the award from the government. On her behalf, he took the Nobel Peace Prize award from the government. And he also made it clear in his speech that this award is people's award. This prize goes to the people. This is people's prize, not Aung San Suu Kyi's. And this victory is also people's victory. In Burma's long struggle for peace, freedom and democracy, this prize goes to the people and this victory also goes to the people. That was made very clear by her son in a speech. Now, Gaddafi, some features of democracy and dictatorship. Though Libya and Myanmar, both the countries were very different, people wanted a similar form of government, that is democracy. Both the countries and the people in the countries were also very different. But both the countries wanted to establish a similar form of government, and that is democracy. In Libya, Gaddafi and the RCC, they worked for establishing a welfare state. RCC means Revolutionary Command Council. Gaddafi and RCC together, they worked for establishing a welfare state. And equal opportunities were provided to all people to improve their lives. In education, jobs, everywhere equal opportunities were provided to the people. And in the same way, in Burma also, the military introduced some welfare measures and land reforms. But it resulted only in increasing the control of the army. The army exploited all the resources of Myanmar, and the people were subjected to extreme poverty. As I told you, they were pushed into such a poverty, they were forced to sell away their children to the army and also to work in the mines. And both countries, they were ruled by people who were supported by the army. And they did not allow any political parties and also free elections. In both the countries, political parties were not allowed and free elections were not allowed. And in both the countries, the military did not allow the elected representatives to form the government. And in both the countries, civil liberties like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of press, they were not granted to the people. They were curtailed. And in both the countries, people wanted a government that is elected by the people, that is democracy. That too, through free and fair elections, they wanted to elect their representatives who will rule the country. And in both the countries, people wanted freedom to express their views, freedom of speech, freedom of organizing into associations, freedom to protest against what they think is wrong. If they think anything is wrong, they must have the right to protest against it. And in both the countries, people wanted many political parties to be able to function freely. And Burma was different from Libya. How it was different? Because Burma began with democratic system and slipped into army rule. Burma started with democratic system. First there was democracy in Burma and then it slipped into army rule. Whereas Libya, it moved from monarchy and then slipped into army. First there was monarchy. After Libya got independence from Italy, the power was handed over to King Idris. So it was monarchy. So Libya started with monarchy and slipped into army rule. I am once again repeating it. Burma started with democratic system. First democracy was established in Burma and then it slipped into army rule. Libya from monarchy to army rule. Now, the march of democracy. England was the first country to establish modern democracy in 1688 after the Glorious Revolution. In 1688, we have already learnt about it. The Glorious Revolution took place in England, and after that revolution, slowly all the countries transformed their political systems to establish democracies. England was the first country to establish democracy. And after that, slowly all the countries, they also transformed their political systems to establish democratic forms of government. Democracy was preferred by many countries because it opposes feudalism and monarchies. And also it rejects the privileges based on birth. Democracy opposes the privileges based on birth also. And many people, they are against these privileges based on birth or feudalism or monarchy. So, many of the countries, they preferred democracy to be established in their countries. Democracy means equality of all the people. And in Europe and America, also, democracies were established through revolutions. In 18th and 19th centuries, revolutions were led in these countries, and in both Europe and America also, democracy was established. Mainly, industrialization and colonialism created conditions all over the world to establish democracies. And thus, each country established a model of democracy which was suitable to its needs. And in 20th century, democracy became the slogan of anti-colonial struggles in Asia. All the Asian countries which were under colonial rule, they were struggling for their independence from the colonial rule. And democracy became their slogan. In 20th century, when they were struggling for their independence from colonial rule, they used the slogan democracy. All the countries in Asia and Africa, they started to give a slogan of democracy to get independence from the colonial rule. India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, these are some of the examples of this process. And some of these countries were able to attain freedom and establish democracies also, like India. We got independence from Britishers and we established democracy. However, many of them could not build stable democracy. Though a democracy was established, again they slipped into another form of governments, like Burma or Pakistan. In Pakistan, military dictatorships got established in Pakistan. And in countries like Pakistan, military dictatorship and democratic rule, they keep on coming in cycles. If first it is military dictatorship, after some years it will be democratic rule again. That means they keep on coming in cycles. In Pakistan, military dictatorship and democratic rule, they keep on coming in cycles. And in most of the countries under military dictatorship, the people are organizing movements to establish democracy. Those countries who have dictatorship also, in those countries also, people are struggling to get independence from dictatorship, to put an end to dictatorship and establish democracy. And we saw the examples of Libya and Burma just now. And during the 20th century, another form of political system came into existence, that is communist system. These communists, they believed that parliamentary democracy, the type of parliamentary democracy which was established in England, it helps only the rich capitalists to control the country. And it cannot represent the real interests of the poor working people. The communists believe that parliamentary democracy of the type of England, which was established in England, it helps only the rich capitalists to control the country, and it cannot represent the real interests of the poor working people. And they believed that this was possible only through the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Proletariat means working class. Only if the dictatorship of working class is established, then only it is possible to look after the interests of the poor working people. And dictatorship of the proletariat means that is communist system. And this dictatorship was needed to ensure that the rich and powerful landlords and capitalists did not get any power. It is very important to see that the rich and the powerful landlords and capitalists, they do not get any powers or any opportunity to pursue their policies. It must be only in the interest of the working class. And such political systems like communist government, it was established in USSR, that is Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. In 1917, after the Russian Revolution, communist government was established in USSR, and in Eastern European countries, after 1945 it was established. In China became a communist country in 1949, and in Vietnam and Cuba, communist government was established after 1960. Now, however, these countries did not allow multi-party elections because communist government is only communist party. In communist countries also, they don't allow multi-party system. And one party usually ruled for several decades. Only one party, that is Communist Party. Different candidates belonging to the Communist Party, they contest in the elections and the people elect their representatives. And they also established state control over media and did not allow people to freely form associations. In the beginning, when they established this communist form of government, these countries also, USSR especially, it established state control over media. Media was under the control of the government. That means freedom of press was not given. Freedom to form associations was not given. And they did not allow open criticism of the government policies also. And any attempt to change the government, they were also not allowed. And thus, even though they claim to be working in the interest of the poorest people, though these governments, they claim that they are working for the welfare of the people, it is not a genuine government for the poor. And they ended up curtailing the freedom of the people. At last, they deprived the people of their freedom also. And that is why in 1991, the USSR got disintegrated. The countries which were under in the US Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, all those countries, they were fed up with the restrictions imposed on them by USSR, by this communist government. So they wanted to get separated. And thus, USSR got disintegrated in 1991, and all the countries, they established their own governments. Poland, Hungary, Eastern European countries, Estonia, Russia, Ukraine, they became independent and they established their own form of governments. Most of them, they established communist government only, but they had their own rules and regulations. And today, it is increasingly becoming very clear to all the people. Today, it has become very clear to almost all the people that democracy is the only form of government which respects the freedom and rights of the people. And today, a new kind of democracy is being forced throughout the world, in which even the poorest will have a voice and equal justice and peace for all. And let us see how far these democracies will be successful and they can be stable. Now that is the end of the lesson. Now see the democratic governments in 1900 and 1950. You see the map. Marked with red, they are democratic countries. You have to identify the countries like Alaska, Canada, USA, Central America, and Peru, Chile, Bolivia, Argentina. In Europe, Spain, France, and England, Norway. All these are democratic countries between 1900 and 1950. And the second map, in 2011, what are the democratic governments? It is shown in yellow color, you can see, and the red color shows countries in transition. That means which are going to shift over to democracy. That is in transition. Now homework, read full lesson and underline all the important points, complete the blanks in the material, and textbook page number 243, answer the map related question and fill the table in the next page. This map is related to the two maps which I showed you now.